In today's call in XRS, we're going to talk about the Performance tab on the XRS webpage. Before we start talking about all the different reports available under Performance, let's go ahead and take a look at the knowledge base to see where that relates to performance. So if we open up the knowledge base by clicking on knowledge base, I've already got that open down below here. So this is what the page is going to be displayed when you open the knowledge base. So we would go ahead and we would click on performance. All the different topics and references, the other section right here, all relate to the performance reports on the XRS webpage. And we'll be going through each one of these. The help is a good first place to go if you have questions relating to what we're going to talk about today, and I'll make several references to those help topics as we go through these. The first one we'll start with is the scorecard. So I'm going to go ahead and click on scorecard. Now the scorecard can be grouped by organization, so you can run it by organization. You can also group it by driver. I'm going to go ahead and select by driver. Then you could select the organization that you wanted to run against, as well as you could select resource groups if you wanted to narrow it down to a specific resource group. And then we'll just select the date range, units of measure, and then show detail by day, week, month, or quarter. I'm not going to specify that. So now I'm going to go ahead and click on generate report. Now the scorecard goes off of 7 components. Each one of those components has a threshold set, and then there is a weighted average that is calculated against that threshold if it's met or not met, and then points are deducted based on those settings. And those settings are set up under your company settings. So now we see the 3 drivers here that we ran in the driver report. The first column here shows the organization. Second column shows all the drivers. Third column shows the total score. So there's my total score for each one of the drivers. And then here's the different components. So we have miles per gallon, we have the score and the value. So each one of these drivers here received no points for their miles per gallon score because they exceeded the threshold that we had set up for performance based on miles per gallon. So they get no points. Overspeed percentage, the top driver here in this example exceeded the threshold that was set, whereas the other ones didn't. So they got 100 total points. Same thing with the idle percentage. So the top driver here in the list exceeded the threshold, whereas the other 2 did not. They once again got total points there, so 100 total points. That's the most points that you can get. The hard brake score, so we exceeded the threshold, the top driver did, the bottom 2 did not. Then we have high speed brakes. Okay, nobody got any points there. High RPM percentage is next, and then violations, so nobody had any violations, so everybody got 100 total points. Then there's total distance. And then lastly there's a column that's going to show your total drive time. Now each one of these has a weighted value set for each category, like miles per gallon, overspeed percentage, for example, idle percentage, and you can see that the top driver here, Drummond, had all zeros except for one category, violations. So, and the violations percentage was weighted at 20%. That's why we got a total score of 20. So this, once you get this tweaked to how you want it, you can use this as measuring drivers and seeing how they're performing on a daily or a weekly, monthly basis. Once you go through the company settings and kind of get a feel for those, it'll help understand the scorecard report a little bit better. But that's the basic concept behind the scorecard report. Next one we'll talk about here is the operation summary report, and then we'll move on to the operation profile. The operation summary report is going to be based off of the settings that you have set up for performance as far as your speed brackets, speed limits, things of that nature. And once again, that's going to be in the company settings. You can group this one by organization, by driver, or by vehicle. I'm going to select driver here, select my resource group, and then we'll just leave the date right there and click on generate report. So here we see the operation summary report by driver. The following columns, as you can see, it'll list the driver in the left hand column. Then it's going to show our total fuel economy for that date range. So 14.5 miles per gallon. Total miles for the date range, total gallons that we consumed. Then it's going to show our road fuel economy. When we're talking about road, what road means, road miles or road fuel economy, that just means from location 1 to location 2, location 2 to location 3, and so on. There's also another distinction, and that's yard fuel, yard miles. Okay, that's not on this report, but we'll see that on a subsequent report. Yard miles would be when we're in an official stop event. So we have our stop time setting set to, let's say, 5 minutes. We get to a stop at a customer. We're there for 5 minutes. Now we're in an official stop event. So now if we have to drive around the yard or we're idling the vehicle, that does not fall under road fuel economy or road miles, etc. That'd be yard miles. Okay, so road miles is just from location 1 to location 2, and it's not any activity when we're at the specific location in an official stop event. So we have road miles and gallons, and then we have columns for overspeed miles and overspeed miles percentage, high RPM percentage. Then we have hard brakes, so how many total hard brakes did we have? High speed brakes per mile. Then we have total stop time. Okay, that's going to be in hours and minutes. And then average stop time, which is going to be total stop time divided by our stop count to get our average stop time. Then we have a column for idle time. Then idle time percentage. The idle time percentage is calculated. It's idle time divided by stop time when we're in an official stop event. And then that's the fuel that we're burning when we're idling. And then lastly, we have PTO time and PTO gallons. So those are the different columns of data that you're going to find in the operation summary report by driver. Now there's also an operation profile report as well. You can run that on demand, but you can also link to it from the operation summary report by driver by clicking on the link here under the driver column, which I'll do. So here's the operation profile report by driver. Now this breaks it down even farther. We have set up speed brackets on the website for, you can set them up by company, so they're already set up. And then what happens is we break everything down into those speed brackets that we've set up. So for example, we have total miles traveled in each one of the speed brackets, and then we'll have a corresponding percentage of those miles, so you can get a feel for where you're doing the most driving and what speed brackets. Then total gallons and the percentage of gallons in each one of the speed brackets. Then we're going to see our miles per gallon. And now we're going to start comparing that to the fleet average. So how does this driver stack up against all the other drivers in the fleet, for example? Cruise percentage on in each one of the speed brackets, cruise miles per gallon, and then once again we're still comparing this to the fleet average. Engine work percentage, so is that engine under load, engine coast percentage, brakes per mile. What we're probably concerned about here is if we see a high number of brakes per mile in the higher speed brackets, which could be a sign of tailgating. And then shifting patterns, which we can analyzed a little bit here with our low torque percentage, high torque percentage, and our good torque band percentage. The torque bands are set up in your performance settings, and it's recommended that you consult the engine manufacturer for the proper torque band percentages. Now down here in the summary section of the operation profile report by driver, it's going to break that down into, we have a road section which is going to differentiate our road miles, road gallons, road miles per gallon, total road time. The miscellaneous section contains speed information, so overspeed miles percentage, overspeed time. We also have total hard brakes and high speed brakes per mile. The stop section, total stops, stop time, and average stop time. And then here's that yard activity that I talked about. So my yard move time, how many miles I drove in the yards, yard gallons, yard move percentage. Then we have idle time values, and then PTO if that's applicable. And then total engine time. So once again, yard activity is going to be activity that when we're in an official stop event. So that's the operation profile report by driver. Now once again, if I go into the help section right here, there's my operation summary report. So it gives you definitions of what you're looking at right there. So definitely reference that if you're looking at one of the columns and you kind of want a definition of exactly what it is you're looking at. And you can also see that it's got calculations over here on the right. So if you're wondering how a number got to be what it is, take a look at the calculation column right here in the knowledge base for that. Okay, so under detail activity, let's go ahead and run the trip report. I can select an organization if I choose to. I'm going to go ahead and select the resource group. And then I'm just going to run it here. Alright, so here's the trip report by driver. I'm going to narrow this down a little bit here. Alright, so you can see the date range in the upper left hand corner, and this is going to be probably one of the more comprehensive reports in terms of all the different activities that your driver was doing for whatever date range you run it for. The column here you have begin time and then the location. Then you're going to have the activity column, which is going to contain everything that the driver's doing, so motion segments, what time they logged in. You can see some of the inspections right here, so pre-trip of the vehicle, pre-trip of the trailer, for example, all the stop events. So there's some examples of what you're going to see. Durations for each one of those will be listed. Miles in motion segments, gallons, if there was a co-driver associated with this particular trip, and then it's going to associate the vehicle as well. This particular report that I ran here has got 3 pages. Now at the bottom, it's going to summarize that information, okay, for this driver. The next page will show that second driver that I selected, but it's going to show the trip statistics for that date range there, so how many miles we traveled, gallons of fuel we burned, what our miles per gallon was, total stops and stop time, our average stop time, stop gallons, stop idle time, total idle percentage, and then we have motion values here, total motion, motion miles, motion gallons, and total motion miles per gallon. So This is the trip report by driver. And there was that page for that second driver that I ran there too. So you can run it for multiple drivers, select the resource group, it'll run it for all those drivers in that resource group. Next is the speeding report. So the speeding report is based off of what we're using for a speed value. And if you went into admin and company settings, and in company settings you can take a look at what we have set for our fleet speeding threshold. So right there you can see we got 65 set. Now when we talked earlier a few minutes ago about some of the other things like your speed brackets, well that's where when you go into your company settings and performance, that's where you set those up. So there's your RPM thresholds and whatnot that we alluded to a little bit earlier. I'm going to select the resource group to run against here for the speed report. Select that date range, that's good, and generate report. Now while I'm waiting for that to run here, I'm going to go and click on speeding report in the knowledge base. And here it gives some of the content definitions here of the speed report. There's also a sample report that we could take a look at too in the knowledge base. I'll go ahead and click on it. Okay, so this is the sample report in the knowledge base here. I'm going to actually click back over to the one that I ran. So here you can see that it breaks this down by driver, and then it lists the organization that that driver is a member of. And under each driver there, it breaks it down day by day here in the date range. Shows the vehicle that was associated with that driver. Then we're going to have our road miles per gallon, and we kind of talked a little bit earlier about what road signified. We're also going to have our different speed brackets here, and then the percentage of time that we were traveling in that speed bracket. For example, second driver right here, 2929. Most of the time spent was traveling in the 5 to 35 mile an hour speed bracket as an example. So you're going to get the breakdown in terms of all these speed brackets for each of these drivers and their percentage of time in each one of them. Lastly, the last column shows their max speed. So if you got, for example, a high percentage in the 70 to 75 bracket, and you have your speed limit set at 65, that can go back to decreased fuel economy if we're driving too fast, and potentially some safety issues as well. So a couple different things that you can kind of look for in terms of the speed report too. Alright, so I'm back on the home page here, and under performance we have the idle report. Now in the knowledge base, I'll pull that up. Here's the idle report as it gives kind of an overview. It gives an overview of each one of the reports, the details and the parameters, and then it shows the report fields. So this is right out of the knowledge base right here. The idle report here, you can group it by site. You can also group it by driver. So do you want to see idling at a site, like maybe you want to see how much idle time we have at our domicile locations, for example, or do you want to break it down by driver? Idling is a kind of a large factor in terms of saving some money and fuel. So if you got drivers who are idling, they're parked at a stop for an hour and they're idling that truck for an hour. There could be some definite savings there if we can cut that idle time down. So you can see I ran this one by site, so it breaks it down into the different sites that we have set up on the XRS website, and then it'll break it down, show the vehicle ID, who the driver was, the state there would be jurisdiction. Then it's going to show the idle time at each one of the occurrences of that stop, for example. Then it's going to show our idle gallon, what our engine time is, engine fuel, and then we have a couple PTO variables here, PTO time, PTO fuel, and then lastly stop time. So for example, here's an example at 9:43 a.m. Central Time, we had 10 minutes of idle time at the Northern Depot, and we were stopped at the Northern Depot for 10 minutes. So did we need to be idling for all 10 minutes while we were stopped there, for example? Now in the driver column, you can click on the actual driver here. So let's go to that example for the 10 minutes, and I'm going to click on the link in the driver field here. And now we're seeing all the information for the idle detail by driver. So the idle detail by site can link to the idle detail by driver. So now we can get a feel for the driver there and their idle time. And in the location column, if you run in the report by driver, you can link back to the idle report by site as well. So that's both the idle report by driver and the idle report by site. All right, let's go take a look at the PTO report. So PTO is power takeoff. Not everybody's going to utilize PTO. You can group this by site, you can group it by driver, you can group it by vehicle. Now I'm running this against the data here in my test database, but I'm gonna go pull this up here in the knowledge base, because I'm not sure if we're gonna what we're gonna see on my test report here, if we're gonna see any data. So we don't see any data, that's fine. I'll kind of explain that here. So I'll go ahead and just click on the sample report. This is a PTO detail by site. The PTO detail by site, that's going to show the arrival date and time and the departure date and time that we got to the site. Then the driver in question, the vehicle, what time we started PTO, what time it was engaged, what time we stopped the PTO, the duration of that, and then it's going to break it down into PTO gallons, average RPM, and then peak RPM. So this is just kind of an example right here of what we'll see on the PTO report. Once again, you can break that down by vehicle. You can also break it down by driver. All right, utilization report. Now keep in mind, in this beta process, if you see something that doesn't look right, we'll want you to contact the support group to get that issue logged. If you click on Contact Us up here in the upper right hand corner, that'll get you to the email address that you can send an email to, and it's also got the telephone number that you can give us a call and let us know, what you're seeing. All right, so there's the email address, and here's the telephone number right here. All right, the utilization report, so I can run it by organization. I can also group it by vehicle. And I'm just going to leave it like this and run the report. Okay, we grouped this one by organization. So here's fleet utilization by organization summary. Here's the top Drummond organization, so total miles traveled, and then it breaks it down, so domicile time, customer time, shop time, other stop time, travel time, unassigned time, total usage, and then the percentage of utilization. And each one of these is broken down into days as well. I want to reference the online help, the knowledge base here. Because in the utilization report, some of those things that we just talked about, so what's the definition of domicile time? What's the definition of customer time? When you're talking about setting up sites, then you can differentiate between, I set this site up and I designated that site a domicile. I set this site up and I designated that site as a customer location. So that's where that data is pulling from right there. And then here it gives you how the calculations are happening. And then also there's a sample report down here that you can click on and blow up and take a look at as well. So definitely when you're looking at some of the data right here and you're kind of wondering how we got to where we are, take a look at some of the definitions for the respective fields here. Okay, the last ones are here are under critical events. So we have our alert report, black box report, and our fault code report. Now the alerts are going to be set up here under admin. There's several different alerts that can be set up. I'd suggest once again reference the online help. You'll see all the different alerts and kind of how they're set up. That would be a good place to go for that. Alerts also come into the website. We talked about that on one of the previous calls, but here's my alert inbox right up here. And I'm going to go ahead and run this alert report then. Okay, you can see the different ways that we can group this report. I'm just going to run it by organization. And I'm going to select a specific organization to run that for. We can do that. And then my date range. So alerts will be things like unknown driver, for example. Alerts based on, here's a couple, low drive time, unassigned vehicle activity event. So the summary report's just going to break it down in terms of how many events did we have associated with low drive time. You can see over here on the right, we had one. How many events did we have associated with unassigned vehicle activity? Now, for each one of these, if you want to see the specifics for each one, you can see that this is linked. So I can click on this unassigned vehicle activity, and now it'll show me all 18 occurrences of that unassigned vehicle activity event. So now we can see where those occurrences took place. So the date and time, who the driver, they'd be unassigned obviously, the vehicle, location of that, and then you got your alert threshold and alert trigger. Once again, for definitions of that information, you want to reference the help here. So if I click on alert report in the knowledge base, you can see some of the definitions of, this is the summary report right here. And then if we go into the alert report, the detail report, here it gives like a definition of what the alert threshold is, what the alert trigger is. So take a look at that. You'll have a better understanding of what we're looking at. For example, when you look at what the alert threshold is, what the alert trigger is. Okay, the black box report. The black box report is going to be based on a company setting for your deceleration rate that you have set up. So for example, the range is from 4 miles an hour to 15. So it's a decrease in speed of Let's say we have it set to 8 miles an hour. So it would be a decrease in speed of 8 miles per hour in a second. Okay, that would trigger a black box event. Something that would be useful like in an accident situation, for example. Here you can run it by a driver, you can run it by vehicle. And select the resource group and run the report. Close out of my alert report. So here's the black box summary by driver. It's going to list the driver here in the left-hand column, the date and time of the occurrence, the vehicle, location, speed change type, so you're going to see deceleration there, and then what the actual speed change was. You can further break that down by going to the black box detail, which is going to be linked right here. So each one of these is a link, so I can go to the black box detail if I choose to. Now if we look in the knowledge base here for black box detail, the black box detail report is used to display second by second speed, direction, RPMs, throttle, brakes, cruise and clutch information around a hard brake event. It's going to show 60 seconds of information prior to the event and 30 seconds of second by second detail immediately following the event. So here's that the black box event detail. So when it happened, latitude, longitude, who the driver was, the vehicle associated with that, and then here's those different columns that I just referred to. So you see that 60 second, 59 seconds, and so on. So it's kind of like that countdown column for times. Latitude, longitude, directional heading, the vehicle speed in that second, engine speed, throttle percentage, whether or not we had the brake depressed or not, whether or not we had the cruise on or off, and then whether or not we had the clutch depressed. And typically what kind of looking for here is just the pattern of driving behavior leading up to the event. Now as you scroll through the report, page through the report, when you get to the actual place where the event took place, you can see the different colors right here. So that's where the actual hard brake event, black box event took place. And then once again you'll see 30 seconds of detail after that as well. So useful in an accident situation, maybe use it in conjunction with maybe a police report or what the driver says, witness accounts, to kind of hopefully add to what actually happened in the particular event. So once again we had our black box summary, and then we can link to the black box detail report here too. Last one here is the fault code report. Okay, so on the fault code report, once again we can group this by organization, we can group it by vehicle. We are hooked up, that ECM is hooked up to that relay, and any information that that ECM emits, we capture. And as far as a fault code report, you can see I don't have any fault codes here, but essentially what it is we're hooked up to that engine computer. If the engine emits any fault codes, we put them on the report. We don't define them, we don't make up what the fault codes are. That's all based on the engine manufacturer. So when you run this report, it'd be a good report to kind of be proactive rather than reactive. It might be something that you want to send to your shop, let's say on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, send with when you get a PM done, for example. It's kind of like when you have your check engine light come on in your car. You take it to the shop, they hook it up to the computer, and they say, oh, it's got a code 38. So they look up in their book, what's a code 38 reference? Oh, maybe it's a speed sensor. Okay, so now we need to test the speed sensor. Speed sensor is bad, replace it. Same kind of premise applies. on the fault code report, it'll have like process identifiers, message identifiers, so numbers, and it'll say like a PID of 138 and a MID of 28, for example. The shop can look that up in their book and reference what that goes back to. So once again, just a tool to kind of help diagnose what might be wrong with the vehicle. So that's what you're going to get from the fault code report. Once again, I didn't have any fault codes, so that's a good thing here. So those are the different reports that are found under the Performance tab of the XRS website.